Hi, everyone. Welcome to Express Sessions. My name is Ellen Diergardi, and I'm the Director of Events for the Express News Group, which includes the East Hampton Press, the Southampton Press, the Sag Harbor Express, Express Magazine, and the website 27east.com. Today's Express Sessions event is the third in a five-part series titled Local Matters, and the purpose is to allow all of you, our readers and members of the community, to help guide the conversation. We've already had stops in Southampton Village and Sag Harbor Village, and we will be in East Hampton on December 11th and West Hampton Beach on January 8th. We have a wonderful group of panelists to help lead our conversation today, and I'll introduce them in a moment. I want to first thank everyone here at Cowfish for being such gracious hosts. Thank you all. They really are incredibly helpful. As the person who sets up, I have to say, round of applause, please. One of our favorite spots. Thank you all, and I'd like to thank our sponsors who make these events possible. The presenting sponsor of the Express Sessions is Rocco Carrera Wealth Partners, which is a financial advisory firm with offices in Southampton and East Hampton, and have been sponsoring these sessions for a long, long time. Big thanks to Rocco and his team. Our sessions leaders have also been on these events as sponsors since the very beginning, and they are the Adam Miller Group, which is a law firm based in Bridgehampton, and Advantage Title, which is a title firm with its main East End office in Riverhead. And our sessions partners are Dayton, Ritz, and Osborne Insurance, Saybrook Capital, and the law firm of Toomey, Latham, Shea, Kelly, Dubin, and Quartararo. Thank you for your support to our sponsors. And lastly, I want to thank our media partner, WLIW-FM, which is Long Island's only NPR station, providing a unique blend of news, music, and entertainment from the East End, from their studios in Southampton Village. You can listen to WLIW on your FM dial at 88.3, 88.7, and 96.9, depending on where you are on Long Island. And of course, online at wliw.org/radio. Thank you to the entire WLIW team. As for today's discussion, our idea is to focus on issues facing the residents of Hampton Bays, who over the last couple of years have faced questions around development in the downtown district, the potential for a new sewer district, and the push by the Shinnecock Nation to build a travel plaza on land just north of us off Sunrise Highway. We have a terrific group of panelists to help lead this conversation, and I'd like to introduce them now. Joining us are from right here to down that way, Southampton Town Supervisor Maria Moore. Thank you, Maria. Southampton Town Councilwoman Cindi McNamara. Thank you, Cindi. This mic really has a sweet spot where it's right there. Janice Scherer, who is Southampton Town's Planning and Development Administrator. Thank you, Janice. Michael McCullough, who is the Vice President of the Hampton Bays Civic Association. Thank you, Michael. Minerva Perez, who is the Executive Director of OLA of Eastern Long Island. Thank you, Minerva. And Lisa Goree, who is the chairperson of the Shinnecock Nation's Tribal Council of Trustees. Thank you, Lisa. As I said earlier, we especially want to hear from all of you today. Bill Sutton, our managing editor, who is here, will bring around a mic. So please introduce yourself before speaking, and please be brief so we can hear from as many of you as possible. And with that, I turn the microphone over to our moderator of today's event, executive editor of the Express News Group, Joe Shaw. And Joe, you're not going to have to lower the mic this time.
I know. What a pleasure to just walk up to the mic and not have to adjust it. Thank you all for being here today. We appreciate it. This is, as Ellen said, the third in a series of Express Sessions events that we're calling Local Matters. Essentially what happens is when we sit down in a community, a lot of times our Express Sessions events sort of come around to the same topics or important topics in those areas, no matter what the topic of the day is. So we thought it would be sort of an idea to try and go into the communities with an open slate and really ask what the agenda is for the conversation today. So we actually sent a survey around to our readers, got an incredible response too. We got several dozen responses, and I'll talk about what they said after we go down the panelists here. But the first thing I want to do, we have such an incredible panel here today. I want to ask each of the panelists as we go down the list here what they think some of the topics are. So we'll do that first. And I'll remind everybody, this is meant to be a conversation. When we come to Hampton Bays, it always is, which is great. Like, the audience needs to be part of this discussion. Same with the panelists. I think once we get down the panel once, I really want everybody to feel like you don't have to wait for your turn to speak. Just catch my eye. Let me know if you have something to say, and we'll bring you into the conversation. Feel free to ask questions of each other. Let's make it a free-for-all. It's always more fun that way. So I started the bidding early on for Maria to try and pay me off not to tell you, but it is Maria Moore's birthday. So I hope you'll join me in wishing her a happy birthday. She did not achieve the level of payment that I was willing to not say that. So happy birthday. And I'm going to start off with you, Maria. There are so many things to talk about, and Hampton Bays is in many ways a nexus of a lot of the things we talk about town-wide. But I want to ask you, what do you think is a topic we should talk about today, a topic of importance for Hampton Bays?
Well, one of my favorite topics with Hampton Bays is the downtown revitalization and the creation of the sewer district. And I'm particularly excited about that we now have located and have the property that we need. And as soon as January hits and we have the community preservation water quality money, we're going to buy that. We already have a contract signed. And then it's, we'll be off and running. We'll look for an engineering firm to start doing the design, and that's going to help so much with the water quality and the revitalization of the downtown.
So we'll put that on the agenda for sure. Cyndi, what do you think some of the issues that we need to talk about today are?
Is this like Family Feud?
It is kind of like Family Feud, a little bit.
Maria touched on a lot of the good things that we're working on Hampton Bays. There are still resounding issues with overcrowding and rentals and people parking on front lawns. And, I would rather talk about the good things and the good places we're going in Hampton Bays, but I feel like it would be doing a disservice to Hampton Bays if we didn't discuss some of the issues with Hampton Bays.
Sure, fair enough. Janice, appreciate you being here. A lot of the things we talk about in Hampton Bays are related to planning. And obviously, I think just from the brief conversation we're already having, that's true today, right? There's a lot to talk about in Hampton Bays when it comes to planning. You might want to bring your microphone a little closer too, by the way.
Sorry.
Sorry not to give you.
Like
yeah, I know. Sorry, didn't give you a chance to eat. Apologies.
I know, rookie. Yes, it's that's why you asked me to be here, right? It's just we're trying to accommodate growth, yet manage growth, yet deal with density issues, and so all of those things fall into the realm of planning, and most importantly, also try to mitigate the problems with our beautiful surface waters and water quality, and that it's a balancing act for sure.
And Hampton Bays is very much in the middle of all of those conversations, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay. Minerva, not surprisingly, a lot of the conversation I got from the survey revolved around the recent activities of ICE in Hampton Bays. I will say that the responses I got were on both sides. Some said more. They would like to see more ICE presence in Hampton Bays. A lot of people, I would say the majority of people said they're more concerned about that. But maybe you can talk about, we will talk about that. Are there other issues that we need to talk about with Hampton Bays?
Yeah. Can you hear me with this thing?
Is it?
It feels like it's not there. Okay,
There it
I'll be
is.
right here.
There we
Okay,
go.
good. I'm sorry. I'm a little.
What
I'm
happened
down
there?
a hand.
I
I
see
had an
that.
operation, but I'm a little. I'm not 100%. So, forgive me. So, actually, the thing that came to mind when you said about that, about not just Hampton Bays, but across the East End, would be the health and wellness of families, and specifically mental health of our adolescents. There's a lot of work that we dedicate ourselves to, not just for Latino kids, but all kids from middle school all the way up through college, and we do that across the East End. It is a growing concern. certainly, but I think there are some really positive ways to move forward that we can do together as communities across the East End. So that's interesting for me to talk about.
We will definitely talk about that as well. Michael, you're vice president of the Civic Association, right? So you've been observing for a long time. What do you think some of the issues are that we need to talk about today?
Well, I came up with a long list, actually, based on our recent meetings. Let me give it to you. So, obviously, the Westwoods development is a big issue. Water quality and the PFAS contamination, traffic congestion and infrastructure, housing affordability and illegal rentals, governance, zoning autonomy, and incorporation discussions, downtown revitalization and economic development, septic modernization and nitrogen problems, emergency services in the fire district, open space preservation and land use, and last but not least, tourism management and park and beach access.
A lot of lists. But there's a lot going on in Hampton Bays that is deserving of conversation. We'll try and hit as many of those topics as we can today. Lisa, obviously Westwoods has been one of the topics that a lot of people want to talk about, but I'll ask you, are there other issues you think that we need to talk about today related specifically to Hampton Bays and the tribe's property?
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Joe, for inviting me here today. I think it's very important for the Shinnecock Nation to be part of the discussion that relates to Hampton Bays as far as the revitalization. So I believe that if we were invited to be more of the conversation, we could probably help you address some of the issues as well.
We obviously agree. That's why we have you here, and thank you for being here today. We appreciate it. So I'll tell you that the survey copied a lot of the things that Michael talked about, and I think a lot of the things we've talked about in general. The development of the business district was very high on the list. The ICE activities, very high on the list. Affordable housing, very high on the list. I'll also say that homelessness and the issue of the homeless in and around Hampton Bays was something that was brought up by several people. The Westwoods property and the ongoing dispute between the town and the Shinnecock Nation was another thing. So a lot of topics that I think we can sort of do a grab bag here, but let's start with the development of downtown. And as you said, Maria, you talked about the new development, which is that you do have a site for a sewer district. Talk a little bit about where we are right now in the redevelopment of Hampton Bays. Where are we in that process?
Well, with respect to the sewer, I mean, that's a very critical feature. And once we purchase the property, then we'll be able to hire the engineers. And, based on what happened in West Hampton Beach and what's happening in Riverside, it seems like it would take 2 years to do the design and then another 2-3 years to construct. So I know it all seems like a long time to say 5 years from now, but you've got to just get started, because in 5 years we'd look back and say, if we had only started, we'd be done by now. So
remind people where the property is.
Well, it's right next to the Jackson Avenue area where the police department and the highway department are.
Okay.
And there's a big swath of land that we're going to purchase for the community preservation as well. So we're buying 2 parcels, some for community preservation and some for the sewer treatment plant. And, that'll help. That'll certainly help with the Pine Barrens Commission, too.
Sure.
But we're also looking at, it's pretty exciting because on December 4th at our work session, we're having this group come in that's been working with us on the Jackson Avenue. It's like a master plan for that area so that we already own the property, we can put a lot of our facilities there instead of taking properties off the tax roll. I mean, I know we just did purchase that one building at next to Matsulin at 133 West Montauk Highway, but in a few years, 5 years, 6, whenever we get it done, then we could sell that building and move the code enforcement and public safety offices over to the Jackson Avenue and still have our police there. And so it's a whole master plan for that area, and it's pretty exciting that this company we hired is doing a conceptual layout. So we'll share that with everybody on the 4th and see where that goes.
Are you feeling deja vu at all? as far as having to do a sewer now that you went through this in West Hampton Beach Village? How do you think that will help moving forward, that you've been through this process once at the village level?
Yeah. Well, of course, the main concern is the water quality, but it's got the benefit of allowing for more restaurants, and that's the key. I mean, that's what was motivating for me in West Hampton. I thought when I first got elected, why isn't this a walkable? Why don't people want to come here like they go to Sag Harbor and Greenport? And well, they have more restaurants. But why do they have more restaurants? Well, because they have a sewer. It always came back to the sewer. So yeah, it's exciting to be able to do that and create these opportunities. And because restaurants bring people and walkability.
Cyndi, I want to talk about when the sewers is here, and that's obviously, as Maria said, it's going to take a few years. But we really need to start thinking now about what that means for how Hampton Bays develops. And we've seen a couple of visions for what Hampton Bays Main Street might end up looking like. Talk a little bit about what you think is the best way forward for the town when the sewer is in place, when you're going to have that ability for more development.
So, I mean, the key to it all is actually this lady next to me for planning purposes, because, if you look at what's going in West Hampton is now so successful that they're having parking issues. I got an email the other day from the Hampton Bays Civic asking us to limit parking at the railroad station on good ground because all of those spots are now taken by commuters. There's nowhere for people that go downtown to park. So, parking is going to be key, and it's going to be just as crucial as far as I'm concerned, parking is right up there with the sewers. I mean, you can't bring in business, it doesn't bring in people if you don't have anywhere for them to park. And let's face it, we are, an area where everybody drives their cars wherever they want to go. And great, in the summer we have more Uber drivers and stuff. We have issues in Bridgehampton where they're inundated by Ubers and Uber drivers. So it's twofold. I mean, it's really getting it done, getting it right now as far as planning goes. And I've said it a bunch of times now. I would like for Alfred Caiola to come in, and instead of having these sessions where he's showing people pictures of what it could look like, bring an actual plan. Let the community vet an actual plan. What do you actually want to do? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Can we accommodate it with infrastructure? I really think, as one, if not the largest landowner in downtown Hampton Bays, which he is, he's got a lot invested in it. And I think that, just like we've gone to the community with the Easterner, with the hotel at the Bordy Barn, if you can bring the community a plan that they can tangibly see and say, we like this, we don't like that, then you have a starting point. But when we put forward zoning, which is really hard for people to conceptually wrap their heads around, all right, so many square feet, how many apartments is that, how many people is that, and then it's open to interpretation. Whereas if we have a plan and we know what you're looking for and we know the density you're looking at, it's a lot easier to plan all of these things, parking, infrastructure. So we really, I think we need to start with a plan.
Janice, a two-part question to you. First of all, to sort of springboard off what Cyndi's talking about, what do we know about Alfred Caiola and his proposal for the north side of Montauk Highway? There's a big cluster of properties there, and he's talked a bit about some of what he'd like to do there. But what officially do we know about what Mr. Caiola's plans are?
He's never submitted an actual plan with actual floor plans and square footages on it. It's always been conceptual officially because the VB zone does not allow...
It's village business.
Yes, village business, what it is today, doesn't allow for, I guess, the yield that he's looking to do, although we have no path forward for him. So that's, I think, why Cyndi is saying we should just see his plan, and then we could see how far away it really is from what is allowed now versus what we've been doing is trying to say leave him out of it and let's just come up with our own ideal. But that doesn't work either, because we can have the best ideal in the world that everybody agrees to, but it's not going to be built if the person with the financial side of it, and that's not me being pro-development, it's just being realistic. The person that holds the land has to want to do that. So we can say, you've got to do X, Y, and Z, and that's fine, and that's what we do. But that wasn't very successful either, because so I don't know but there's not been an official submission because there's no path forward.
And that's the second part of my question is, what is the town's vision right now for the redevelopment of Hampton Bays? What can you sort of describe where the town is in that process, envisioning what's going to happen?
We had historical concepts come and do a plan to just say, okay, like what's like village planning and what would it look like? And it sort of had like a perimeter and some roadways and parking in the center. And I don't know if anyone remembers that, but that was also like, just another plan, another layer of like this, potential. So the town is mixed. It's mixed.
But we did ask Janice, right? We asked her, and she's working on a code that we can review that would talk about, what can we allow and what would we want to allow in the downtown? Whether, Mr. Kiola feels like he can make it work with that. It's what we would be comfortable with, the board and the community. So, if we don't want any access to the park, and he says he has to have access to the park, then that's the answer. So I would like to have us look at a code that Janice is working on and see what we can, put together there.
Michael, I want to bring you into the conversation because the Civic Association has been watching this from a distance. And what is your take of what the community thinks? And obviously there isn't one thought in the community, but tell us a little bit about what you think the community thinks. And by the way, in bringing Michael in, I also want to invite the audience into this part of the conversation. We're going to try and do this in bits and pieces, and we're going to give everybody a chance to bring up other topics as well. But for right now, I'd like to ask anybody who has something to contribute about what we're talking about right this second, that if you have something to add or ask, raise your hand, and Bill Sutton will come around with the microphone. But Michael,
So as you said, Hampton Bays doesn't speak with one voice, but there are some common streams of thought in different areas of the community. Just a few basic things to state, though. Obviously, Hampton Bays is the most densely populated part of the town. So anything you do in Hampton Bays is going to affect the residents more directly, more quickly. I think overall, what the hamlet would like is a functional downtown, right? So what people want is a functional downtown where traffic issues are addressed, which needs are addressed. One of the things that comes up all the time with the development is housing. There are many people who do not want more dense housing in the downtown area because we already have a very densely populated hamlet. They don't want more density. So whatever the plan is. Now, obviously, there are some real estate developers in the audience here who know more than I do, but it seems that if you're doing a development, housing is a very important part of it. So that's the problem. The problem is you sort of need housing to make this type of building both successful and financially successful. But there are many people in the hamlet who just don't want more dense housing, so it's a problem. Now, the other point is the water quality. We have water quality issues. We're not the only ones in Hampton. Hampton Bays is not the only area of Long Island that has water problems, but we do have water quality issues and contamination issues that we have to deal with. So sewers are a big part of this, but it doesn't solve the whole problem.
Cyndi, can you talk a little bit about this part of it, is the question of housing in the redevelopment of Hampton Bays? It has been sort of a flashpoint, but almost, am I right in saying, and Janice, I'd like you to chime in too, almost any redevelopment of a downtown wants to add a mix of retail and housing, right? Talk about why that's important.
So, I mean, we're looking at that right now in Riverside. We're adding housing as well as development as well as retail. People want breweries, they want restaurants, they want bookstores, they want brick and mortar things. And in order for those things to be successful year round, there has to be people that live there year round that utilize those amenities, those services. So, and it's also, I feel like the housing is kind of like the bread and butter of the developer, right? You're not going to have trouble filling those apartments. They're going to bring in steady rents, whereas we all see retail shops sitting empty and not having stores in them. But there has to be a mix. There has to be, and I don't think anybody in Hampton Bays is saying there can't be any housing associated with this. I think everyone is okay with some housing, but it's finding that balance of, what is appropriate versus, what basically is going to keep the community happy, but also allow the development to be economically feasible. And, and this is where, Maria and I kind of disagree on where she thinks we should have a code and I think we should have a plan, because we can do this village business code, but this village business code would be a village business code for all of our hamlets. And I feel like we're trying to focus on Hampton Bays, and I really want this to be Hampton Bays specific, because, what Hampton Bays might like is, we saw it when Riverside Rediscovered happened. They were all about housing. They didn't care. I mean, the number of units didn't scare anybody. If you said that same number of housing units in Hampton Bays, the room would get up and walk out. So every community is different, and I feel like we have to treat each community in their own way, and we have to find what works for that community.
Michael, can I ask you, do you have an opinion on why people feel that way about housing in Hampton Bays? Why is such a concern? As Cyndi says, like in Flanders, in Riverside, that's less of a concern. People are okay with more housing. Why is that a problem in Hampton Bays?
Well, because you have to remember, we have a very diverse mix of plot sizes and housing sizes in Hampton Bays. So I live on a 1/4 acre plot. Not far from me, there are 5 acre plots of land. So for the people who live, and especially closer to downtown, you have smaller lots, people feel already that there are enough people around. There are enough cars around, there are enough people around, there's enough demand on services. We don't need more of that. So, it's understandable. And as Cyndi said, there probably is a sweet spot somewhere in here where you could have some housing. But again, to meet the demand of affordable housing by putting it above stores in Hampton Bays is a real problem for a lot of people.
And I just want to, on that point, I just want to say that's one thing we haven't talked about is we're not saying that this is going to be affordable house. This could be market rate apartments. I mean, yes, a mixture with affordable, but a good amount of market rate. And that's another area where you have to find that balance, is what we just did in Riverside with finding out like what kind of percentage everyone is okay with having as affordable versus market rate, because those market rate apartments, you could do less of them and offset your costs versus all affordable and, be struggling to make it by. So that's the other balancing act where, people I think are okay with some market rate where maybe some of those apartments are utilized in the summer months. So, we have to find that balance too. And that's, again, where a plan where people can tangibly see what's being proposed and not have it in their head that it's all affordable or it's all market rate or it's all this or all that. It's an actual something that they can wrap their heads around and say, you know what? I like this, but I don't like that. Can we work on this? And then we have a starting point to have a conversation. Right now, we have all these abstract ideas that everyone's interpreting in different ways.
Janice, this seems contradictory to me to some degree, that even in our survey, we talked about people are concerned about the redevelopment of the downtown. They also think we need more affordable housing. And yet those aren't necessarily the things they want to see in the downtown. And yet the downtown is where affordable housing is more likely going to go. How, as a planner, how do you make sense of all this? I mean, you are in the middle of that conversation to some degree. What do you tell people? How do you try and guide this conversation when there's so much contradictory? There's just so much contradiction in this conversation, I feel like. And by the way, I do want to invite the audience in as well. If you have a question or comment, please raise your hand. Okay, good. That's good.
Table would be the one.
Yeah, it is very difficult because, again, it's a balancing act. When people say you don't need affordable housing, if you look at all the people that come and ask for variances for accessory apartments, they're mostly from Hampton Bays. Most of the people who need it, quote unquote, are from Hampton Bays. They say, I need it for my elderly parent, my brother, whoever it is, they need it, they want it, they're asking for relief. So there is a need, and it's hard to say there isn't. And these are existing residents who say, I need this for whoever it is in their family that needs an additional living space. So the need is a good, someone secure in their own house with their own thing can say we don't need it, but someone who has, they grew up here or they work here and has no opportunity would say they do. So it's that need thing is a tricky one. But the the downtown when we first, like years and years ago when we did the corridor like strategic plan, the idea was like, okay, what about the downtown? And everyone kind of came to these charrettes we did with Ernie Hutton at the time, if anyone remembers that name, and Tom Neely does. And so we did all these charrettes, and everybody came there and could not agree. No one could agree on anything. So it was left as a compliment, like, do something and figure out the downtown. And here we are so many years later, and we still really don't agree on what the right answer is. But I think that the mix of use is critical for a walkable hamlet center. And it just comes down to, what does that mean for this community? And some people would say it means zero housing, and some people would say it means 100%. So I'm here to do the board makes decisions, and we can guide and give you visuals, and we all know the right answer academically, but the right answer in a textbook is not necessarily the right answer in the reality of like, well, I don't want my school tax to go up, and I don't want another car on this road, and all the things. So it just takes a lot of patience and to just try to work through it. And, in the end, no one really gets out, without, like there's going to be another future generation that may make very different decisions. And so we try to do historic precedent, and we try to keep in keeping with the town and the look and feel. But when we're all not here talking about it and there's a future generation, they could be like, we're doing this. And so you try to set up the pieces in a way that's going to stand the test of time. That's the best thing I could say. And then they can be, but if you set it up in a way that's sprawl or not, some of these buildings, they can last over 50 years, 100 years. So you really want to set it up in a way that makes the most sense for walkability. And then you can add or whatever the use is later.
Minerva, do you have a perspective on this?
I do. I think the one thing I want to say before I forget is the importance of considering transportation and the infrastructure of all of that. I mean, parking. But if we're talking about local people that want to go to local places, I use it occasionally, not a lot, but I think it could only get better. But the on-demand Suffolk Transit little bus, it basically almost picks you up at your door. You might have to walk a block or two, and what that can become if we put the kind of attention into it and the help of the county, and I think the county has the help of the state. Right now, Southampton has it, East Hampton has it to a degree. It's a limited area, but if you make it what it should be, which is safe and clean, Wi-Fi accessible, kind of a sexy thing to do, you've got people that then will not get in a car and have to drive. And sometimes you just want to have some dinner. You just want to walk around Main Street, and you'll have a way to do that. I did that with taking from where I live, right off of Noyak, into Sag Harbor Village. So considering transportation in that doesn't have to mean the big, giant, gas-guzzling bus that rolls around with two people in it. But if you've got on-demand, which is the future, you've got a situation where you've got people using it, you encourage it, and you're not, you're still looking at parking, but if you encourage that at the same time, I think it's a really important thing to do. Also for youth, we don't need to make sure that every 16-year-old has their own car. If we've got youth, they got to get to and from their jobs, to and from after-school activities. If their parents can't get them there, you've got, viable and safe mechanisms to do that. I think it's important to build it in. The other thing I want to say is that I just wrote a note here to talk with Michael about bringing in some Latino business owners as well from Hampton Bays. Some of our board members are Latino business owners for 20 years in Hampton Bays. They're probably already involved in some of the conversations, but just to make sure that going forward there's continued great ideas coming to the table. We know a lot of great ideas means that sometimes things don't happen at all. But I do think that the diversity of thought and ideas are important when we're looking at generations to come.
This is why we bring people together. And this kind of setting is for just that kind of dynamic to try and bring people together. We have a comment from the audience. If you can introduce yourself.
All right. Easier. My name is Carol McNeil, and I've been in Hampton Bays for about, 2009, so about 18 years. And I rarely go downtown other than to King Cullen. Not because there aren't shops I like, but the thought of going down there and getting stuck in traffic is just horrendous. I think, when I saw the plan for that downtown thing a few years ago, I was like, wow, no, it's not going to happen. You can't compare it to West Hampton and Southampton. Those are beautiful towns, but we are a bypass town. Our main street is a driveway, a drive-through for people. Until you address the access to the East End and other areas, there's the last thing I want to see is, 50 apartments. Everybody has at least one car each. So that's just 100 cars right there. I think it would be wonderful to have some kind of downtown. I actually like our downtown. I wish they spruced it up, what we already have. But to add a whole nother area and access not directly to Sunrise Highway or 24, those roads are just used so much. And I think the traffic issue is the number one. And yes, your sewer will bring in the restaurants. I grew up in Bayshore, and I was there for over 25 years. I think of how many years it took for them to get the sewer district. And Bayshore is beautiful. Same with Patchogue, same with Sayville. But those aren't drive-through towns. People don't drive through the town to get to the East End. So I think we're very special in that way, which is not a good thing. Unless you're going to start condemning housing and widening Sunrise Highway, I think that's a big, big issue for me.
No question that traffic is tied directly into this, and it was a big part of the survey. So how does that fit into this plan? Because there isn't a lot you can do, right, about the way Hampton Bays is laid out as it's laid out now. Somebody want to take that? Jump ball.
So that was the idea behind that North Main Street and making like the north side more walkable, and the sort of the Montauk Highway being more of somewhat of a bypass, but just the walkability is really more on the north side, and that was the goal in that North Main Street idea. So that was where the acreage was, and then if you put perimeter parking or you create otherwise like some kind of transit that like Minerva was talking about on demand or shuttle or something along those lines, then you get people to get out of their cars and then walk around on the north side.
Let me pause for a second and just say what we're talking about would be sort of a parallel to Montauk Highway, north of Montauk Highway, that would be sort of between those properties and the park, right?
Correct. That's what we're talking about.
And much of that land is owned by Mr. Keola.
Right,
correct?
and that's why Cyndi here is saying, let's see what he wants to do instead of talking about it in the abstract, because then we can sort of say, this is good or bad or indifferent. There's more to talk about when somebody's literally laid a plan on the table than us coming up with 50 different iterations of something that may or may not ever happen.
Just in theory, Cyndi, if we did a project like Mr. Keola has suggested, how does that impact traffic? What would that do in a positive or negative way to traffic in Hampton Bays?
I would hope that a lot of people would stay more local to do what they want to do and do the shopping that they want to do. But let's face it, most of us that live in around Hampton Bays, if we want to do a day of shopping, we're not going to Southampton Village. We're not going to West Hampton Village. We're getting in our cars and we're going to Route 58. That's where we're going. So, the people that you're trying to attract to these downtown businesses are people that have, I think, more of a disposable income. It's more summer-based, and yes, there would be year-round things like restaurants and breweries and potentially coffee shops and things of that nature. But, when you talk about these highly successful villages that have beautiful main streets that people stroll down and get ice cream, and they're high-end shops. Most of the people are going there getting ice cream, and they're window shopping. The local people, anyway. The people that come out for the summer, they're actually going into the stores and spending the money. But we have to support those businesses in the off season too, just like they have to support us. So there's balances with all of this, with having enough people to support, but also having businesses that local people can go to. And this whole North Main Street idea is great, and what I don't want to see is creating a little pocket downtown where people go to and forego the businesses on the drive-through, because they're the ones keeping Hampton Bays going right now. They deserve to be as much a part of this as the new Main Street. And we can't let that get overshadowed. We can't, just cut Montauk Highway loose and say, we're just, you people on that have struggled to have businesses here, that have made it, we're going to now focus on this new shiny part of town, and you're kind of pushed to the wayside. We have to build all of Hampton Bays up, in the entire downtown, and make it a place where people do park and get out of their car. We had kids come to our meeting and say, we have our parents drive us out to Sag Harbor because, we can't shop there, but we will walk around and we get ice cream, and there's people watching to do. And I mean, for me, going to Southampton Village or West Hampton Village, it's for people watching, not for shopping. So, everybody has their different thing that brings them into an area, but it is, like I said, we have to build up the whole area. We can't focus on this, new Main Street, because we're doing this for everybody in Hampton Bays, not just, the new and Alfred Kiola. It's for all of our business downtown to thrive. And to your question about the traffic, you're not going to get rid of the traffic on Montauk Highway. It's there. One of the things that I saw the other day when I was actually traveling west was they had one of those signs. This is kind of off topic here, but they had one of those traffic signs that said, like when you're going west, it says Whitestone Bridge, 11 minutes, Throgs Neck, 10 minutes. And it was actually the reverse. And now everyone's driving around with these apps in their car going, well, Waze is telling me to get onto Montauk Highway, but they're not telling you that it's to save 1 minute. And most of those people would stay on Sunrise Highway if they knew that getting off and going on was going to save them 1 minute. So I think one of the big things we can do to try to alleviate some of the Hampton Bays traffic is to get one of those signs put up that says, hey, listen, in that morning when that traffic is coming through on Sunrise Highway, if you stay here, it's only going to take you a minute longer to stay here. So, I mean, there are little tweaks and things we can do. I mean, Charlie's working on the traffic right now going west, but, that the cone program has been great and it's worked, but it's brought more traffic into residential areas. Mm-hmm. So, and I've gone off topic here now onto traffic. But
no, I think that's perfectly on topic. Lisa, I wanted to ask you, do you have a perspective on this part of the conversation about the downtown in Hampton Bays?
Well, actually, as I'm sitting here listening, Shinnecock Nation, we have the same issues. We want housing. Excuse me. We would love to have, affordable housing for our tribal members. We would love to help with the revitalization of Hampton Bays. If we could develop our land, we could build shops, restaurants that would attract people as well. We are a government that is recognized by the federal government. We do not have, we don't pay into real property taxes, so we don't collect revenue from our tribal members that way. We have to create our own economic development. But in order to provide housing, adequate health care, we have to be able to build an income that is necessary to take care of our people. So that is my perspective. We want this, as I'm sitting here listening, I'm like, wow, we just want the same things. Housing. We don't want to put, well, I'll say it this way, we do not put our elderly in nursing homes. We want them to age in place at home. We had a caregivers program for our elderly that was funded by the federal government. Those funds ran out, so we no longer have that program. We are now having to lay off many of our tribal members that work for our government. One of the one of the programs that we recently had to cut, actually, it was one of our departments, our cultural department, one of our most important departments within our government. We had to lay off the 2 employees who are women, who are single parents. 65% of our tribal members are below the poverty level. So we could contribute, to the revitalization if we had the ability to develop our land.
And we'll roll into that conversation as well, but I want to bring the audience back in.
A couple. Yes, my name is Bill Keen. I'm a local resident. I've lived here almost all my life, though I worked in Manhattan for a number of years. And from that experience, I'm involved with commercial real estate. From that experience, I note a couple of different things. One, with regard to multifamily housing, it's a burden on the area because theoretically there will be more children going to school, and Hampton Bays already has a much higher school tax than Shinnecock Hills, for example. So one thing that I see that might work is a tiered tax system where multifamily is taxed at a different rate than single family, so that you don't put more burden on the existing residents in Hampton Bays, and perhaps then they become more receptive to multifamily housing. Multifamily housing does help with congestion because you don't have all the people driving from Shirley and wherever. You would be able to create workforce housing there. The other comment is really to Lisa and to the town, and that is I don't understand why we can't work together to form some compromises and plans. A negative mention to the Shinnecock Nation, and I'm not trying to be mean, is the cannabis sales there. You have one facility that was built there that was beautiful, architecturally significant, and it's surrounded by these neon sign little shacks, and they're all competing against each other. To me, that's a great example of not planning. You're only going to sell X amount of cannabis or cigarettes or whatever, and I'm not really trying to be pro or con to that aspect, but what you've created there is not attractive, and you need to do more planning.
Lisa, I'll give you a chance to respond to that.
Well, our tribal members have to earn a living. So with those businesses, we lease that land to those businesses that are out there on the highway. So that's one way that the tribe actually generates revenue from those businesses. So the planning for that highway, it didn't come from the nation. It came from individuals who want to earn a living for their families and have a better way of life so that they can send their children to college and give them more options in colleges and education to choose from. We don't have that ability right now. Our children mostly go to state schools because that's where the financial aid comes from. We don't have the ability to send our children to colleges, Ivy League schools where, the tuition is way too much for a family to afford. So those businesses out on the highway, although they may not be attractive, they're a way of life for the people of our nation.
Can I ask you, Lisa, to follow up on this gentleman's point? The number of shops that have opened up along Montauk Highway there, has that affected the market at all? Are they all doing well? Is there enough business for that many shops to be open? Do you have a sense of how they're doing since so many? Because there are more than a half dozen, I think, along that stretch now. Is there enough business for all of them to be doing well?
I believe most of them are doing very well. Like I said, they're able to contribute, to the nation's economy. If we had more space out there, we would probably allow more businesses. So, yeah, some of them are doing very well.
And since we have you all at the same table, I'll ask, is there a way forward for the town and the Shinnecock Nation to talk about some of these issues, especially at Westwoods and come up with a strategy that works for both sides. I mean, this has very much become a legal battle and only a legal battle. Maria, is this going to be an issue that has to be resolved in court before those conversations take place, or can those conversations take place while the court proceedings are going on?
Yeah, those conversations can take place while the court proceedings are going forward. And we did ask our attorneys to prepare a document that would say, well, we could resolve these issues under these terms, and then give it to the Shinnecock's attorneys for their response. So that's in the works right now.
And Lisa, are you familiar with that, or that conversation?
We have been more than willing to sit down with the town of Southampton. I believe we did have the town attorney reach out to us a few months ago saying that the town board would like to sit down with the nation. However, we have not seen anything written that was given to us yet. So we have had conversations prior to the injunction that was placed on our territory. We offered for the town to sit down, meet with Janice Scher, and review the plans, and then right after that conversation is when we were served with the injunction.
Are you open still to continuing conversations about more of a global resolution to the disagreements?
Of course, we've always welcomed conversation with the town. Like I said, the only thing we want to do is be able to take care of our people. We are recognized by the federal government again, so we abide by the rules and procedures of the federal government. Like I said, if the town wants to see the plans that we have put forth for the gas station, we didn't just come up with this plan overnight. It was approved by the federal government. We have an $18 million approved loan by the federal government. So far, we have spent $6 million of that loan for that structure that is sitting there, rusting, deteriorating, and we're building up $22,000 a day in interest over there because we're not able to do anything with it. So we're more than willing to sit down. We want to get this resolved as much as they do.
Cyndi, is the lawsuit an obstacle to this, or is it a necessary step towards this?
So I've continued to have conversations with members of the tribe because as I said, I grew up here. I went to school with some of these people. Like I said, there's some people that won't talk to me, probably will never talk to me again. And there's other people that will continue to have an open dialogue with me. The problem where we're at right now is, and I've brought this up before, is now we have litigation that's ongoing. And every court decision to date has said that the town, that property is subject to town zoning. So we can have these discussions and we can have these negotiations, but it's no longer just the town and the nation at the table. It's the residents too, because the residents can come and sue the town to enforce our zoning because every court decision to date has said that land, and this is not something that we asked for, that we want. We asked for an interpretation, and every decision that has been handed down since this began has said that Westwoods is subject to town zoning. So it's now just not two of us at the table, it's the community as well, because they've already done it once where they came and they took the town to court they basically wanted to take our rights to enforce our zoning because we weren't doing so. So every decision that the court makes down this road makes it harder and harder for us to override our own zoning. So this all has to go through a process. And we're all willing to have a discussion on what that process could be, but we have to have the community at the table now too to say, what are you okay with? Because it has to be cohesive for the entire community.
Anything to say in response, Lisa, before we move on?
Well, I'm just curious as to why it took the town 30 years to put a zoning code on the map. If you say that you enforced zoning back on us back in 1986, but yet all of the maps show that it was designated as Indian reservation until about a month ago.
Let me ask you this, Lisa, just to sort of put a fine point on this. If the nation loses ultimately in the legal battle over the town having the right to enforce zoning, What does that mean for the project? Do you still see a way forward for the project if that happens? I suspect you will tell me that you don't think that's going to happen and you'll fight it to make sure that doesn't happen. So we'll take that as stated. But in the chance that that does happen, is there a way forward even after that?
Well, first of all, I don't think the nation is going to lose. This case does not belong in any state or local court. This case belongs in the federal court, and that's where we are definitely trying to move it to. We have a foot in the door, and we're just going to continue to push that door open.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Maria Holtz, I have 3 points to make. First of all, it seems to me that everyone I've spoken to, and I used to be on the Civic, is not so much against the development of Alfred Kayola, but they don't want 3 stories. I've been here since 1971, and people want to keep the flavor of this town. So building up isn't necessarily an answer. Number 2, having that development where it is wouldn't necessarily bring in children, but it might bring in a lot of young working people who would be able to take the train and just walk across the street and take the train.
Yeah, I think your microphone, I think it may have gone dead. Hang on one second. Battery change. This is like the Indy 500. Brianna's a pro. Don't try and do this at home. That is a serious technological pit stop there. Well done, Brianna.
As I was saying, can you hear it now?
Yes.
Okay, I think that having this development across the street from the train station could bring in a lot of young professionals who could commute without having to drive. I myself commuted to New York for a while, and driving is a headache. It's much nicer to be able to take the train or the bus, but the train station being right there. So you don't need a car to be local or to commute. And number 3, the only thing I would say to Lisa, and I'm certainly not against the Shinnecock, but I was at a meeting of the Hampton Bays Civic where Lance spoke, and he's a very powerful speaker, and he made one hell of a case for what he wants, but his parting shot or words were, "We don't care what anyone says, we're going forward." And that is not, to me, an indication of someone willing to negotiate, which I don't think he is, but that's a personal opinion.
To be fair, Lisa, you're in a fight, right? And when you're in a fight, I'll let you make the point.
Well, they may have been Lance's words. We are very passionate about our people. We're very passionate about our land. Southampton may say that they have, rights over our land and they can enforce zoning, but nothing can occur on that property over there without an act of Congress. A lot of people say, oh, well, you gave away the land back in, 1600s, 1700s. That could not have happened without an act of Congress. I cannot sign over a piece of that land to anyone without an act of Congress, and that's done through the Non-Intercourse Act, where the federal government has say-so over that land, and we do also. So, you may say there were deeds that we gave away that property, but those deeds are invalid. Congress has the final say-so on what we do with that territory over there.
Do you still have friends in the federal government at this point?
Yes, we do. We actually met with members of the Department of the Interior several months ago. We also had a meeting with Congressman Nick LaLota. He supports our fight. We've had several meetings with members of the State Assembly, including Tommy John Scavone. So we do have a lot of people that support us.
If you could introduce yourself, please.
Yes, Hope Sandro. My husband and I do have a home in Shinnecock Hills, but we also have our family's home maybe some of you look as old as me, know Ada's Attic that was on Montauk Highway. That was our family, Bob and George. And I convinced them not to sell Ada's Attic to the developer that wanted to put in a 7-Eleven, etc. It took me 6 years, but it became the first property in the town that was preserved as part of the Community Preservation Fund. So I'm proud of that. I spent years sitting in their yard. I used to do their gardens. We made a nice presentation of Ada's Attic, geraniums mostly. But we had pride in the town, and Bob and George loved it. They loved the village. We walked everywhere. But I'm very disappointed that no one else in the village has followed our example of having the properties bought by the Community Preservation Fund. And I'm also disappointed that the individual property owners have not improved their properties, instead asking for the town to do it. I want to point out, in a positive note, that James McGuire Antiques, Jimmy, was Bob and George was his mentor. And I don't know if you know this, but he's the great example of someone that is living and working in the same place. Jimmy lives on the second floor of his store, and he's, as you know, as you go by there's flowers in all the pots. He's caring for them. I'd like to see more Hampton Bays business owners follow Jim's example, and Bob and George. I'm very disappointed that it really doesn't look, well, the gas station next to the hardware store is gone, but much else has stayed the same, and I felt like our family invested in the future of Hampton Bays, and I'd like other people to step up by preserving what's good about it.
Let me ask, do you have a feeling? Go ahead, Cyndi.
I just want to speak to that point about business owners and the upkeep of the downtown. A lot of that is we actually just got a slew of complaints about signage and things downtown, and rather than having code enforcement go out and issue NOVs, what I asked Ryan Murphy to do, and what he subsequently did do, is he had, code enforcement go out. They met with the business owners. They issued not a notice of violation. They gave them a paper that said, this is what you're not in compliance with. You can either correct it, or you can come in and meet with us, and we'll have a conversation about it. And so Ryan and I, and my aide Paul Godfrey was there as well. We had 2 days where we had business owners come in. And we had an interpreter there. And what we found was it was a lot of Latino-based businesses. They don't have the money to do these grandiose, renovations. A lot of them don't own the buildings. We had a woman crying because she's renting an exorbitant high rents for a landlord that won't make minor improvements to the building and basically keeps it code compliant, but not much beyond that. Her signage was in an effort to draw people in off of the drive-through street to just feed her family. And what we found was, when we had this conversation with them and explained, this is our code, this is what you're permitted to do. And Ryan was very good about working with them, like, you can cut this out, not covering your windows fully. And this one woman particularly was taken aback because he said to her, he goes, if you are in your store at night and somebody is robbing you, and nobody on the street can see inside of your store and see what's happening, how is anybody going to help you? And she broke down in tears and said, I didn't even think about that. So, sometimes it's not a question of, do these people, they would love to have their businesses look like downtown Job's Lane, but they can't afford it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are dealing with landlords that aren't doing a lot of investment in the property because they can't get the rents that they would get if we had a more vibrant downtown with more foot traffic. Everyone's kind of just making it by right now. And that's what we're trying to improve upon. We're trying to make it a place where people want to go, want to spend money, and we can build everybody up together.
And to that end, we are going to reinstitute the facade grant program in the town that was previously in place, so that the shop owners can get some money to help, new windows or small changes on the exterior. And
Minerva?
And there's, some other things we can do. Like Rick had mentioned, well, he's gone now, but moving the sidewalks. Oh, you're there. Moving the couple of crosswalks that we have to different locations to have one go right to the park. And there was a thought to ask the county to put, we have these little curb extensions, they call them, or bump outs in West Hampton Beach, and you can put a couple of benches and a flowering tree, and then people can sit and eat their ice cream there, and it just changes the whole look of the street to do that. Of course, you lose a couple parking space, when you do that for each one. So I don't know how that would go over, but I did ask the county, and they said they'd be willing to consider it if we gave them some pictures of what it could look like. And I find that when the municipality starts to put money into the community, the other community property owners step up as well, and they feel like they, have confidence as well, and they put their own money into it if they have it.
Minerva, there are a lot of Latino-owned businesses in Hampton Bays downtown. Can you speak to this about the challenges?
A little bit. First, I just want to thank you guys for making the conversation happen. I love working with Ryan Murphy. I have lots of encounters with Ryan Murphy just to make sure that the needs that he has to be met in terms of compliance or safety, whenever Ola can step in and either help with interpretation or help in other ways, just to make sure that a homeowner or a renter is understanding why the code that they might be tasked to fix is necessary and safe, and also to make sure that landlords aren't using tenants as pawns or as bludgeons to get a lot of rent out and then not have safe spaces for them. I think that the dialogue is very important. I think every business owner would want to have their business look beautiful to be enticing and be more successful. I do think it's interesting, though, because with Hampton Bays, when we kind of look at, we have an office in East Hampton Village, and it is... I can't even window shop in East Hampton Village. I walk around there. And so, you look at some of the beautiful shops, quote unquote beautiful shops, that you're not even ever going to walk into because you're going to go to 58. And then so you've got, what is this balance point? So in Hampton Bays, you got a lot of folks that are year round, that are going to these businesses, whatever they might be, bakery businesses or delis or what have you, or salons, and it's important to note, okay, if that's what people from the local community are spending their money to do, then it's a business that potentially could be a thriving, worthwhile business. I mean, it's a business. And I just think it's interesting, the different dynamics of a town that don't make it lesser, but it makes it its own DNA of the town, which can be sort of celebrated for what do the local folks that live there want to go shop and buy, and not just Latinos, but other people. And I was also thinking about the difference between villages like Sag Harbor Village or East Hampton Village or West Hampton with the kind of arts and culture component. Those folks have West Hampton Beach Performing Arts. You've got Sag Harbor Cinema, the church, Bay Street. You've got all these spaces. You've got the movie theater in Hampton Bays, it's all right, but there's a different dynamic in these different villages. I don't think it's good to compare, whatever that is, the thief of joy or something, comparison. But I think really taking a deep look at what the community actually is, celebrating that, which doesn't mean that you go down in quality or that you have an ugly facade. I think it's wonderful that you've got this grant program, and just maybe another way of involving other Latino businesses and other businesses that are thriving to step in and participate in that and help fund that as well. And that's not off the table. There are thriving Latino businesses that should also be helping to fund ways that other, less successful businesses might be getting some support. I did also text Lars while we were sitting here, because I do know that enrollment is down in Hampton Bays School. So enrollment is down just about 4%. But what's interesting about that is it's a much smaller incoming kindergarten classes, but it is down at least starting this year about 4%. I just want to make that fact.
I should add that Lars Clemenson was one of the first people I approached to be on the panel today. He is actually upstate for a convention. Every time we hold one of these in Hampton Bays, he's upstate for a convention, unfortunately, and he wants to be here. No, he wants to be here. He genuinely does, and he really wanted me to mention that he couldn't be here today. But I would agree, Minerva, that it's an important thing to say that Hampton Bays has seen declining enrollment over the years, and that's been more of an issue than anything, I think, in Hampton Bays.
Although I thought that Lars had said, even if the incoming class was smaller, that the other grades are seeing increases from people relocating
I think overall,
here.
Overall, 4%.
yeah, overall it's down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my name is Gail Lombardi. I'm a resident of Hampton Bays, and I just want to specifically thank Cindi, Councilperson McNamara, and Supervisor Moore for actually listening to Hampton Bays. It's been a long journey for some of us where we weren't listened to. So thank you so much, and I also want to thank Michael for standing up for the Civic Association. As far as the downtown, I know me personally, the biggest issue I have is that, and I'm a big critic of the way we do zoning and planning, because we do these little pockets of zoning and planning, and we stop looking at the comprehensive plan, or we find a spot in a 20-year-old comprehensive plan where we dust it off and implement it to satisfy some version of illegal spot zoning. The developer wants to do this property owner wants to do that, and we tweak some existing zoning to make that happen. That's not, I spent thousands of hours in my head buried in SECRA and planning. That's not the way it's supposed to happen. So my biggest concern, going back to the very first speaker, is that we are not looking at, can our infrastructure handle anything? We have, the new 7-Eleven going up at the gas station, the new business where the diner was. We have in the planning board, they're still looking at the mixed-use zoning development where next to Ville Paul, where the housing project is now, another X number of apartments. So it's you're doing these little pockets, and you're doing your environmental review for each one, and you say, oh yeah, we could do this, we could do that, we could do the other thing, until you put them all together, and then you go, oh my gosh, we can't do this. And that's what you've done to Hampton Bays. And as far as the accessory apartments, it was represented to us, unless I'm misremembering, that the lion's share of the accessory apartments were not coming from Hampton Bays, based on the CPF representation. I don't know if that's true. And I do want to speak to and I don't want to call Simone out because he likes to stay in the shadow, but if there's a business owner that maintains his property, it's Simone Scotto. And he really deserves our support and really takes care of, downtown. All the property owners in downtown that especially own their buildings, like the what's the gentleman's name? The new bar?
Rod and Reel.
The new Rod and Reel. That gentleman has spent, I don't know how much money renovating that building and looking out for Hampton Bays. He's there every day. Simone's there every day, and his family. The people that are dedicated to our community deserve our support. Mr. Caiola's buildings, those brown buildings where there's a couple of rentals, I literally want to go in there with plywood and try to fix up that building myself. So I'm hoping that our planners and our town will look at the big picture and see what our real community could absorb and keep the character of it. And if it's a big goose egg, then it's a big goose egg. Sorry, we may not be able to support that much more development. So that's what I have to say. And thank you anyway.
I will second Gail's comments about Simone. I think he deserves a round of applause for. As a proud resident of Hampton Bays, I find Scotto's to be one of the great things in Hampton Bays.
To Gail's question about
Yes.
the accessory dwelling units, right, Janice, you weren't saying they don't have the most. That's where we get the most requests from. They're not permitted, but we get the most
variances
requests.
for relief because they don't meet the code in one way or another.
Let me ask real quick another question. Is there any movement about getting a new drugstore in Hampton Bays?
Walgreens.
Can you
pull
your
Rite Aid.
microphone towards?
She said Walgreens.
Walgreens is going to be where Rite Aid.
That is going to happen?
Yes.
Oh, good. Because it's a crisis right now in Hampton Bays. It really is.
They're just applying for a change in tenancy, and then they'll come in for their signs and whatever.
All right. So a little bit of news.
Yeah, the owner did come in and ask if the town wanted to lease it out for our own offices, and we said absolutely not.
Please put in a drugstore, right? Yeah.
Please put the drugstore in, and he said he had Walgreens on ready to go.
Another question?
I have a question. Oh, Dolores Riley. I live in Shinnecock Hills, Hampton Bays, and I filled out the survey. I've listened to other people talking. And to me, the most important thing is the last No Kings March I was in, I was actually wondering, I wonder if it's really safe for me to go there. But the people have said something about ice. They keep mentioning ice, and we're almost out of time.
No, we've got time.
We have some time. Okay, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure you guys get to
I
it.
actually wanted to go there right now. So, Dorothy, thank you for that. Yes, appreciate that. So let's talk about that. Minerva, I wonder if you can put into some perspective. I think we all know what happened on November 5th. But can you talk about the impact that has had in the community? And I'm talking about the community at large, because there was a real response from Hampton Bays and West Hampton Beach and West Hampton and some of the other areas of town to what happened. But can you talk about what the fallout has been from the ice raids?
But first, I want to understand the speaker, Dolores. When you talk about safety, please tell me what you mean by that.
I mean that I always feel safe here. I love Hampton Bays. I love living here.
Can you grab the microphone real quick?
Thank you. But the last time that I did No Kings March, I participated in that. It was the first time I felt nervous. And I go to the movie theater at night, and people are always on next door saying how unsafe the movie theater is because there are crazy people there. I go anywhere. I feel fine. I feel great. But this last time, and when this young woman just said what she said about ice and helicopters, I live in Shinnecock Hills. I love Hampton Bays, and I feel safe here and happy here, and I don't feel that way anymore. I realize it's not just Hampton Bays.
You're saying you feel unsafe because of the ice raids.
Because of the ice raids and because of the craziness in the country. And you said something about other things.
I've told Minerva knows this, but
Take the microphone if you would.
As I said, I live in Shinnecock Hills, down the road, and we're on a hill. We're lucky. But one morning, I was on the front of our house, and 3 Black Hawk helicopters appeared out of the oak trees. You know, there's oak trees all along the road here. As close to me as Rick is, and I could see that there were weapons mounted on the pontoons. Our whole house shook, and I called the police. They knew nothing of it. They told me to call the Coast Guard. I called the Coast Guard. They knew nothing of it, but they took my name and number and called me back and said it was federal and they couldn't do anything about it. And I also don't feel safe now.
Say one thing.
Go ahead.
It could have been the Air National Guard. Their helicopters have this long protrusion on the front, and it looks like it might be a weapon, but it's just to allow them to do the in-air refueling. So it's this long metal protrusion out the front of the helicopter. So it might have been what you saw.
Well, it was crazy because it was right over my head. And I was thinking, are they going to shoot people that have black hair? I mean, now I have dyed black hair, but I'm natural black hair.
actually do.
But that's the way I felt, that they were looking.
Let me give Minerva a chance to talk about this. This is not unusual in the community right now, right?
Yeah, no, I love to jump in for a second on it. From, I think, a perspective that many might not expect me to say is that I enjoy, over the last 22 years or so, with the work I did before OLA, I ran a domestic violence shelter, the Retreats domestic violence shelter for 6 years. Worked with law enforcement then, worked with law enforcement the 10 plus years I've been working with OLA. And across the board, I see local law enforcement doing a great job keeping our East End safe. And OLA covers the entire East End of Long Island. So in terms of safety, I don't come back from a show at Guildhall or wherever with my keys in my knuckles, ready for someone to jump out of the dark. Our local law enforcement does a great job. There's a degree of safety, of public safety, that we've been upholding, I think, as leadership of the towns and the villages and our local law enforcement. When I look and I see what's happening right now with these random raids, that if they would want to, they have the ability to do a targeted situation if they're looking for someone that they believe has criminal activity. They have the ability to do that. What they're doing right now with these sweeps is creating chaos, creating injury, and creating an unnecessary level of fear that is going into all of our children, not just Latino children, all of our children that are going to school with everyone else. Everyone is fearful. And the idea that you could just be in the wrong place at the wrong time, which has happened. We've seen it. It's not a rarity. We don't need that level of chaos in our towns and villages when we have worked so hard. We have police forces that are pretty sizable and they're doing their job. We've got our town and our village leadership that hold at a high level of importance the public safety. And when we're looking at recently in Hampton Bays and West Hampton, 12 people being scooped up, ICE will then report out on the 4 people that have had some sort of criminal background. I think one person had 2 DWIs, one person had a harassment, whatever they are. Those are people that are in the system enough to be able to find where they live. So the fact is that for those other 8 people that have absolutely no criminal background, and we know there are a majority of people that have no criminal background that have been here for 20 years, contributing members of our community, raising amazing kids, going to school, whatever, we know those people are being taken. And so therefore, that level is kind of coursing through the veins of our community because it doesn't make any sense. There's no logic. But what I'm saying is that is not just hurting Latino members of our community, it's hurting all of us, because if I have anybody that's going to pause before they call 911, whether one of you has had an accident or they're a witness to a crime that one of you or I have had, or whether they're a victim of a crime or they've got a fire going on in their house, if anyone pauses before they call 911, we are all in trouble. We need to make sure that we are seeing it from that perspective as well, which is an overall public safety perspective.
Michael, I want to ask you, the reaction I got from Hampton Bays was complicated. It was mixed. It was the majority spoke up and said what I'm hearing today, which is I feel less safe in my community with ICE doing what they're doing. But I had more than a few responses that said, we support this. We want more sweeps. We want people to be picked up. What's your take of what the temperature is in Hampton Bays on this subject?
Well, like I said before, I mean, Hampton Bays doesn't speak with one voice.
Right.
Again, what happens in Hampton Bays affects people more directly because of density. So at the Civic Association meetings, the issue of illegal housing, saturated housing comes up all the time. The Latino community contributes to that. So there is a perception that the density is partly because of illegal housing. And there are many people that are unhappy with that. Code enforcement comes up at every one of our meetings because we don't have enough code enforcement. And the town board has done a great job in getting more code enforcement officers, but we still have a backlog in code enforcement violations. So there's a mixed perception on how to deal with these issues, and there probably is a much better way of addressing this, and because it's true, this community contributes a lot to our community. So, at the same time, some of the excesses we see in Hampton Bays can be attributed to the same community. So it's a mixed message out there.
Can you speak to that, Minerva? I think there's a lot of truth to that the number of Spanish-speaking people in our midst seems to be part of the problem, even if the people themselves are...
What problem?
I mean, the problems like lack of affordable housing, things like that. I think people point to that and suggest that it's maybe part of the problem.
Well, I would probably address this one to Lisa and say, what does she think that Shinnecock thought when everyone else is coming to town? There's change. Change happens in the community. Change happens across our country. So Spanish-speaking folks that are newer members of the community, some of them been here for 40, 50 years. So there's no influx that has happened. We've got family members that have, that have a good 3 generations here. Some folks started off from Costa Rica, so you've got this kind of wave of different people come from different places. But I think overall, the opportunity that we see with OLA, when I talk with Lars also about the opportunities that are seen by the 50% Latino student body, which is an average across all, not Hampton Bays is higher, but across the entire east end of Long Island, the average student body is Latino is 50%. And that's interesting because it's also the growth, it's also the future, you know. So when we have our community members, and I say that as, I don't separate it out. I say that we are one community. So I don't, when people say, well, what do you do with your constituency, with your community members? It is one community. We are growing, we are changing, we are evolving, we are agreeing, we are disagreeing. We're doing all those things together at the same time. There's no way that we look at a scenario and say, well, it's time for them to go home. So Spanish-speaking people and Latinos in housing the answer to that is not ICE, okay? You know, so when you ask the question about some people in Hampton Bays, or some people in general, not just Hampton Bays, look to ICE as, oh, that's a good thing, that's a good thing. I would counter that it's because many of those people don't really know who's being picked up, don't really understand that the folks that are being picked up that have been here for a long, long time, some of them in a legal and lawful pathway to citizenship, those that have absolutely zero criminal background, that well, maybe I could say I don't have any criminal background because it's true. But other folks that we have in our families and our friends, someone might have one strike against them. You know, the reality is that we've got some members of our community that, and it's a stat that you can look up, but immigrant folks generally are the ones not committing crimes because they're too afraid to get deported. So right now, what I see is that the safety issue around ICE is that they're not targeted. They're not looking for that one person. They won't have to work that hard to zero right into that person they're looking for. Local law enforcement, if someone had a warrant, would be easy to go pick that person up, do it in a way that's safe, that no one's running around with a gun when it's unnecessary. So there are ways of tackling folks that might be here with criminal backgrounds that we want to say, okay, that's going to be the round of people that we really do want to get out of here. There are a lot of Latinos that would 100% agree. The fact is that we are not taking people that have a criminal background, and in the middle of that, we're upsetting our communities to the point where it is unsafe, it is chaos, and our children are feeling it the worst, and our elders as well.
Last Wednesday, we had a board meeting, and there was a large group of people that came and spoke about ICE and the concerns. And so the next day, the board and I met with our chief, and then we issued a letter to Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, Congressman Lalotta, and also the regional office for the Homeland Security for the island, because ICE is under the umbrella of Homeland Security. They work with the U.S. Marshals. So we told them how disruptive it is for our community and the fear that's being created, and that we would like them to at least tell us who's been arrested and why. So we'll see. That letter went out on Thursday.
It was one of my
questions. And the whole board signed it.
I wondered, one of the questions I got repeatedly after the ICE raids was, how much did the town know about this? How much did the town cooperate in this? Can you address that?
Yeah, I mean, we knew nothing about it, and we didn't cooperate with it at all. And to Maria's point about that letter, the other thing that we did include in that letter, which was very important to me, is, a mom of two, a 20-year-old and a 23-year-old, is we did ask that they have some kind of differentiating uniform, because you could have anybody wearing what they're wearing, picking up young girls on the street, and nobody does anything because it's ICE. But is it really ICE? So, and I think, we've seen, we have, it's twofold. One is, I think we really need to get the message out there that our police force is the same police force, has the same procedures as they had way before this to now. And nothing has changed on that front, and we really need to drive home the fact that it is safe to call our police department, because I think that there has been a fear of that, and I don't want that to be out there at all. But I understand the distrust. I understand the fear. We have to, as a community, come together. And I've asked people, there's people that are involving themselves, and the last thing I want to see is an innocent bystander who, maybe there's an innocent bystander getting picked up because they are interfering. But I think people have become very emboldened. And I mean, these are federal law enforcement agents with guns. And I ask people all the time, if you saw Southampton Town police in their uniforms gathering, would you insert yourself in that? And they were like, no. But I think because they're not known to the community. They're not in a uniform manner. People want to know what's going on. And I think there's a lot of people that are videotaping and getting involved to document, because what if this isn't ice? You know, who are they taking? So there's a level of mistrust in the community, and I understand that, but I don't want that to bleed over to our local law enforcement that had nothing to do with this. We're not told when it's happening, and I took a lot of heat for saying that the protest shouldn't be happening at the firehouse. But those are our first responders. Do some of them agree with what's going on? I'm sure. Some of them don't. But they had nothing to do with it. And the perception was they were being protested.
Mm-hmm.
So
just briefly, regarding ICE and immigration and enforcement of immigration laws, what is the local policy? What is the local police's policy?
Well, our policy, first of all, they don't tell us when they're coming. But if they did ask for assistance, the chief has assured us that our policy is that we don't render assistance unless they show us a warrant signed by a judge for a particular person.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Can I just one?
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. One
Sure.
quick thing, and that's great. Actually, the chief is the first person I called on his cell when I knew what was going on. We do have a rapid response group of volunteers that we do run.
This is OLA.
This is OLA, yeah. And what we do with that is we make sure that the training they get is very clear about not obstructing justice, about not physically touching anyone. Documenting is not just to document to sort of be out there rabble-rousing. They could just simply text what they're seeing. That could be enough. And we're cataloging that town by town, village by village, in the event people are disappeared, which they have been just recently, so that we can help find people. We can help know what license plate was used, and if there was any excessive force being used, that we can document that as well. The other reason why we do that is that oftentimes it's the first way that we know who has been left behind. So in many cases, I think in East Hampton, not that long ago, there was a woman with a 4-month-old baby and her sister and another child, and the breadwinner was taken. So in that instance, there's only so much we can do, but at least we know in that moment, food, medicine, what are we addressing? And so OLA, as an entity, which is a nonprofit, is doing that. What I want to look at is that when we're dealing with members of our community that are taken and disappeared, because they're not only not wearing uniforms, they are wearing masks. Nowhere in the history of our country has that been something that we would ever accept. These mask-wearing people that are doing this stuff, it looks like what it looks like for many of the members of our community. They have come from dictatorships, all right? They've come from other countries with unstable governments, I'll just say that, right? So that these folks have witnessed and experienced for themselves and have fled governments where if you're on the wrong side of it, whatever it might be, that you might have to run from that masked person because you don't know who they are and you don't know where you're gonna go if you end up with them. The other piece that I wanna add to an ask, I guess, and it's not of the local town, I don't think, but is to understand if people are wearing masks, there's a good chance that there's some moonlighting going on. And what I would like to know, and the people would like to know, is if someone is wearing that mask and working for ICE on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, are they working for any government entity where they have access to anybody else's data? And what does that document look like that is some sort of NDA, some sort of way to disconnect your ability to have that information and also work for ICE with a mask on? These are not processes that lend public safety to our communities. There are other ways of doing this business if you wanted to do it the right way.
And it should go without saying, but just for emphasis, OLA, I am assuming, is discouraging people from getting directly involved in any kind of action of that type.
We don't want anyone getting hurt.
Documenting, protesting, but don't get directly involved.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Ann LaWall. I live in Shinnecock Hills. I like to go to the movies. One thing we haven't addressed this afternoon is the homeless population that live across the street in the woods that we all know are there. I've been approached twice in the parking lot coming out of the movies, and it's very scary when it's dark and you're alone and somebody pops out of nowhere, nice car. Oh my God, right away you're afraid to open the door. You don't know what's going to happen. So me, it's always a $5 bill. Here, go get a piece of pizza. Please go away and leave me alone. But now I've stopped going to the movies because I'm a senior and I could be a little scared. So how do we address the homeless population, or do we? because you never really hear much about it, but we all know it exists.
We can go a couple of minutes over, I think, because this is a topic it's worth having a conversation about. What actions is the town taking to deal with homelessness, particularly in Hampton Bays, where I do think in the last year or so, I think we've seen an increase in the numbers of people who are on the streets in Hampton Bays.
Well, my understanding is that if it's private property, somebody needs to call the police to complain about it and ask for if someone's sleeping in front of the movie theater, then the owner of the theater or the manager needs to call and request that the person be moved along. Or if you felt threatened, you could call the police and they could come. But I don't think they can just patrol in on a private parcel.
By the time the police get there, first of all, do you have the presence to call the police when someone's staring you right in the face?
Yeah.
In that moment.
It's scary.
So, hello, police. I have a client looking me in the face that wants to kill me for my wallet.
I'd like to ask the chief. He's not here, but I could try to text him, see if he answers. I would love to know some of the statistics around crimes, even little crimes, and being scared in a parking lot as a woman, especially. I think it's the worst thing in the world. You want to be safe and you want to walk out at night. That's the most important thing, is safety. But I do want to see if we can address statistically crimes and crimes committed by folks that we believe to be homeless or living in the woods or what have you. What are those levels of crimes? I know they exist. Whether that be, I don't think we get a lot of carjackings, but could it be a purse being snatched? I want to know kind of what are the crimes that have happened, and if we can get a statistic on that to kind of answer that, and then also work to make sure that you could feel safe going to the movies, and that I'm not going to say that I can make an answer to that, but if it means that there are other ways of getting groups of people together or talking with the owner of the movie theater to have more responsibility, maybe for the lights that are in that parking lot, cameras and all that, if he's doing that, just to make sure that you can feel safer as well.
Is there anything, though, formal or informal happening at the town level right now to address homelessness?
We offer assistance every time. I mean, they've gone into the homeless encampments. They've offered assistance time and again. It's usually declined. I'd say 98% of the time it's declined. A lot of these individuals, it's twofold, right? They're homeless, and they're homeless not, because of, a lot of them are homeless because they have mental health issues, and we're missing that piece, I think, nationwide. I mean, it's a big problem, and so we do offer them the assistance. We offer them, to set them up with the county to get help, and they all decline. So at that point in time, if you're not committing a crime and you're in a public area, there's not much. I mean, we can't go and just arrest people because they're homeless.
Minerva, you had mentioned mental health being, this is one of the ways the region's problems with mental health and the lack of care is showing up, I think.
I think so, and I think depends on the weather. If it's super cold, of course, there's code blue. So at code blue, the county and other ways, you can get involved in other ways, and you could forcibly take people off the streets if it's under, I think, 32 degrees or something like that. But in terms of some of the homeless folks that I've talked to during the nicer weather are working homeless. Just as we know we have working homeless, it's an issue that we have across some of our states and areas. You've got people living in their cars and working, finding places to shower and going to work. That definitely is an element. So not everyone is drunk or completely mentally ill. There's certainly elements of that running through. When I talk about mental health, I'm mainly focusing in on youth and access to more mental and emotional health support because we can't only rely on our schools. So OLA runs a helpline from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week in English and in Spanish. We've got a team dedicated just to that, and that's for all youth. We're on the New York State budget for the second year in a row, and we did that because we saw the lack. So we wanted to make sure that when kids, and these are kids that are texting us in English, 50% of our texts are in English, and those kids have money. Sometimes they have a therapist, but they're not able to reach that person. They're having a bad day, a bad moment. We don't want any kid to feel isolated, so we're addressing it in that way, and that's middle school all the way up through college. But the homeless situation, I know that Maria has done some amazing work in the past past with homeless and with Maureen's Haven. I know you've got a sensitivity to it. I think any approach is one that, you involve law enforcement, certainly, but I think that we also, we tack it on a little bit to housing, but it can't only be. You can't just take all those folks and say, oh, if we had a bunch of housing, that would solve the issue. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. But I think it's a serious issue to keep talking about and doing something about.
I'm going to let you have the last word, Maria.
Well, we did have a situation in West Hampton where there was a homeless encampment, so the chief and I wanted to go there, and we got Minerva's help. She came with some of her people from her team, and the director for Maureen's Haven, and we went in and we talked to the people, but you can't make them go with you. You can only offer them help, suggest they come with you, avail themselves of the services, but unless they're a harm to themselves or others, you can't force them. So that it is a problem, and it's true. Some are working homeless, and in the winter months they'll go to places like Maureen's Haven, and others are not, and there's a mental illness issue.
Local law enforcement is... I'm sorry. It's okay. No, my fault.
Don't you think, though, it has a negative impact on every business in that little shopping center around the movies? So that's not helping Hampton Bays grow.
So,
No.
and one of those business owners, actually reached out to us and asked us not to force people to move out of that parking lot because it was a good percentage of their business throughout the day. So.
Donuts.
So it gets complicated. It gets complicated. We are over time, but I think we've only scratched the surface of a lot of these issues. This is not meant to be comprehensive. It's meant to be part of an ongoing conversation, and we definitely will come back and continue this conversation. But for now, I hope you'll join me in thanking our terrific panel for being here today. Thank you, too, to all of you for being here. Thank you to Cowfish, as always, for hosting us. Thank you to WLIW for everything they do. Our next event is in East Hampton in December, and I don't remember the date exactly. It's one of those Thursdays in December. We'll be doing something similar in East Hampton. Hope to see you there. We also have one coming up in West Hampton Beach in January. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you guys, too.